FBI is in LA.
They give you $2 to vote?
Yeah, we be in the street. We show something.
Would they come down here and try and pay you to vote?
Yes.
They told you who to vote for?
You think it's a coincidence that 20 FBI agents suddenly descended on Skid Row to investigate vote fraud? Why do you think they were there? You don't get evidence by going to rallies or storming the ballot processing center. You get evidence by doing real work. And the first rule of criminal investigation is you do not talk about it.
The FBI just deployed 20 agents to investigate election fraud in Los Angeles. You heard that right. This is no longer just a candidate crying over a loss. Spencer Pratt just confessed that he hired private investigator and secretly built a case so solid that federal authorities are already on the ground. We are talking about California here, one of the wealthiest and most powerful states in the world. And the main election is under FBI scrutiny for allegedly buying votes from the homeless for $2 lousy bucks. If what is exposing turns out to be true, not only does the election crumble, but we could see some very powerful political figures living in handcuffs. Just look at the level of insanity that was just uncovered.
So, I have no doubt that they are doing a flawless job of accurately counting every single ballot in here with robotic precision. Man. The fraud isn't here. It's here on Skid Row, where homeless people are paid a couple $bucks for their ballots.
They give you $2 to vote?
Yeah, we be in the street. We show something.
Would they come down here and try and pay you to vote?
Yes.
They told you who to vote for?
What a piece of kiss.
Can I get a plate? You know what I mean?
It's here where socialist street animals go door to door and violate the ballot harvesting laws. People bring up the old communist adage often attributed to Stalin saying, it's not who votes that counts, it's who counts the votes. No, this is the modern era of fraud. They've gotten wise. The modern communist agrees with the old communist, but just the first part. It doesn't matter who votes. It doesn't matter if it's a drug zombie being paid for their ballot. It doesn't matter if it's a DSA socialist street animal filling out your ballot. It doesn't matter if it's a blue-haired intern at a Nithya Raman-funded NGO filling out the ballots. The bank vault is wide open. The cameras have been removed, and there's no way to count the money. Now, for those of you who wanted me to fight the election, for those of you who thought I was quitting or I was bought off to step aside and quietly disappear, I'll remind you, there's a smart way to handle these things and a dumb way. Evidence is not proof. I don't say things without proof. Now, anyone saying that there's no evidence of fraud is lying. There's tons of evidence, and I was the one who got it. All those videos that you saw of homeless people admitting that they were paid for their vote, where do you think they came from? Immediately after the big spike of votes came in for Nithya, I sent my team down to Skid Row to collect evidence. We were warned by some very well-connected people that this was happening, so we acted on it immediately. But if you want to end this fraud, doing protests and bitching about stolen elections won't get you anything. You need the fraudsters to start catching charges. For that to happen, you need proof. That's what investigators do. They turn evidence into proof with a robust investigation.
This is an absolute disgrace. I'm genuinely shocked. For those who don't understand the scale of what we're looking at, that's Skid Row, the absolute epicenter of the homeless crisis in LA. These are people in extreme vulnerability, facing severe struggle, and political organizations are coming down there to give them $2 lousy bucks in exchange for their ballot, $2. What blows my mind the most is the total impunity. This is no longer a Twitter conspiracy theory or a hardware rumor. The guys sent cameras to the streets and the evidence is right there on video. They are weaponizing hunger and poverty. In the richest state of the world, superpower to rig an election. The system is completely broken.
You all saw how I was neck and neck with Karen Basula on election night, nearly double digits ahead of Nithya, just as the polling predicted.
Raman fighting tears on election night, trailing Spencer Pratt by roughly 40,000 votes and about 10 percentage points.
I dominated the in-person vote. I smashed Nithya on the mail-in ballots too. She was crying on election night.
Incredible.
It was over. Then a few days later, suddenly Nithya started overperforming as they continued to accept ballots 7 days after the election.
Absolutely.
But days of counting mail-in ballots have changed the map.
I'm so grateful.
Raman has now erased a 40,000 vote deficit and moved ahead of Pratt by roughly 3,000 votes, a net swing of more than 43,000 votes.
43,000 votes, which just happens to be the exact number of homeless people on the streets in LA. They assured everyone that this is normal because for some reason that they can't explain, Democrats overwhelmingly vote by mail.
There's a historical phenomenon in national voting called the Red Mirage.
The Red Mirage.
What we were calling a Red Mirage.
The Red Mirage.
Red Mirage.
Yeah. This term was coined because about some swing states count votes, usually favoring Republicans early. Then it becomes an advantage for Democrats later in the evening and then into the next morning.
You expect to see the Republican with a lead, but it's not really a lead.
Democrats vote in higher numbers by a mail-in ballot. Historically, Democrats vote in higher numbers by mail-in ballots.
But not all Democrats, just the ones who were voting for the third place candidate, the one candidate who really needed the vote.
Yes.
Don't forget, there were 2 Democrats in the race,
Don't
but
make
for
sense.
some reason, only the third place Democrat who needed the vote saw a disproportionate spike in votes several days after the election. Plus, multiple studies have shown that mail voting doesn't provide an advantage to either party. It's a myth!
And to really understand why this guy is so unleashed, you need to know his background. Spencer Pratt literally lost his home in those massive LA wildfire. He was left with nothing. And that exact tragedy is what pushed him into politics to fight the current administration in the first place. That's why he said he's going full kamikaze now. He's like, I lost my house, I lost the election, it's too late for me, but I'm not shutting up.
The media will say that claims of fraud here are without evidence. Keep in mind, an anomalous statistical spike like this is evidence of fraud. Ask any forensic accountant. It may not be necessarily
That's it.
proof of fraud, but it is certainly evidence of fraud. But forget the late ballots. Just
lot of
because the
evidence.
vote swing coincidentally matched the specific Lhasa count of homeless people on the streets, just because NGOs that
What is
Nithya
that?
cuts checks to were hoarding ballots,
600,000.
just because hundreds of thousands of dead people and ex-residents who've left California were still on the voter rolls,
Oh, no.
doesn't mean anyone is taking those loose ballots and filling them
Can
out.
be serious.
First off, it's against the law. And we all know if it's against the law, it doesn't happen. Secondly, we have signature
What was
verification. Everyone has to sign their ballot, and a computer checks your signature. Well, except some voters can't sign, so they carved out a rule where you can just make a mark on the ballot, and a witness can sign on your behalf. It can be an X or a scribble or even a happy face, as long as a witness signs off on it. And don't forget, once they separate the ballot from the envelope, there's zero way to trace it back to the ballot to check if a sudden tranche of votes that swung predominantly to one candidate had come from a bunch of ballots with the happy faces in the signature box.
Because of him, the FBI already sent 20 agents to Skid Row to investigate this alleged fraud. We're talking about California, the state of wealth, technology, and progress, and its political stability is being decided on the sidewall of Skid Row for $2 lousy bucks. $2 a vote. A candidate who loses everything in a wildfire refuses to stay quiet. To me, this is one of the biggest political disgraces in the recent history of this country. It doesn't matter what party you are on. The fact that the election of the wealthiest state in the world superpower depend on buying votes from the most vulnerable people on the street for the price of a coffee is absolute madness. This is no longer about who won or who lost. This is about a system that is completely broken.
The DSA instructs their ballot harvesters to go door to door and tell them to vote for Nithya Raman and even help them fill in the bubble for their preferred socialist candidates. This is explicitly illegal. About 5 days before my election, Gavin Newsom signed a ridiculous law that literally banned federal and independent authorities from investigating vote fraud or overseeing elections to monitor for fraud during the counting process.
That's why I'm moving forward with new legislation that would make it a felony to seize ballots before the vote has been certified by state and county officials. We will be the wall he cannot get past.
That's like banning the bank from having security cameras. Now, the timing of this was deliberate. He knows this won't hold up in court, but he did it so close to the election day, he knew the courts wouldn't be able to overturn it in time for the election. It's truly like going up against the casino. The deck is so stacked against you, you never really stand a chance. You can play if you choose, but the house will never lose. So now, in California, you can loot $950 of merchandise. You can knowingly infect someone with HIV, but if you try to prevent vote fraud,
You will be prosecuted.
This is it, guys. I'll catch you guys in the next video.